everybody. Good morning. My name is Stephanie and I work for Moonee Valley City Council. Normally you would find me at Flemington Library, but not today. Today we're in my house and specifically my kitchen, where I will be teaching you the basics of how to make a beeswax wrap. It's something that I'd like to share with you because I've been making them at home for some time now, as it's a good alternative, a good environmentally friendly and sustainable alternative to using cling wrap and also aluminium foil. I have one here to show you already that I've used before or I've made before. So it is currently housing and keeping fresh some grated cheese. As you can see, once you make the wrap, it actually wraps really tightly and really well. Even better maybe than cling wrap and alufoil, and it keeps it sealed in and fresh. So that's what I'll be doing with you today, is running you through the basics of how to make beeswax wraps. It would be great if you could stay with us for the next 20-ish minutes so we can do that together. So before we continue, let's say our welcome to country. Moonee Valley City Council respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners of the land, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung of the Kulin Nation, their spirits, ancestors, elders, community members, past and present. Thank you. All right, so I think we're ready to go. Come with me and I'll show you all the things that you will need to make your own beeswax wraps. Let's go. The first thing that you will need is the actual beeswax. I have here some pellets that I bought online. You can also use the actual blocks of beeswax, which I found at an eco store. This morning session, I will be using the pellets only because we'll have to cook the beeswax mixture together, and I find that the pellets cook quicker. Although I have cooked with the actual blocks before as well, and it does have a stronger, nicer smell. So it's up to you what you will use, but this morning I will be using the pellets. If you do end up using the beeswax blocks, just know that you'll also need a grater so you can grate that. The packet that I bought is here. So I just bought my beeswax pellets online from there. The next thing I purchased was this pine resin. So you don't have to use pine resin, but I like to use pine resin the reason I like to use pine resin is because this is what gives the fabric its tackiness. And that's what helps it to wrap and stick around something, much like the cling wrap would. You can definitely make beeswax resin or beeswax wraps without pine resin, but you'll most likely need a rubber band or something to keep it in place. So the pine resin looks like this, like little stones and rocks, or less stones, more rocky. So that's the pine resin. Just put that back in there. Just quickly, with the pine resin, I purchased that from online as well. So you can get it starting from, I think, 100 grams, and then purchase as much as you need. The next thing that I purchased was jojoba oil. I found this at Chemist Warehouse. The reason that I use jojoba oil in all of my beeswax wrap making is because it's said to have antimicrobial and antifungal insecticidal properties, which if you're using these wraps for food, which is what is intended for, that's a pretty good idea. Also, jojoba oil is soft and pliable when it's cooled down, making it quite useful for when trying to wrap it around bowls and things, and also for helping spread the mixture onto the piece of fabric. So I would suggest getting some jojoba oil. To cook the mixture, you're going to need 2 bowls and a spoon. The bottom bowl, as you can see, is steaming. That's because we're going to be creating a double boiler. The bottom bowl is being used to boil the water, and the top bowl is what we're going to use to stir the mixture of the beeswax, the jojoba oil, and also the pine resin in. There's also a spoon there to stir the mixture with. Just a note about the items that I'm talking about in terms of what the wax will be touching, like the bowl on top and the spoon, and the other items that I'll be saying next. Just make sure that when you do make beeswax wraps, the items that you use to make the wraps, allocate them to wraps only, just because they do get quite sticky with the wax melting onto them, and it does tend to remain on the item, and so they won't be good for food after that. So just remember to allocate these items to beeswax wrap activities. You will also need an oven tray. This is an oven tray that I've dedicated to beeswax wrap making. You'll also need the actual fabric that you will be making the beeswax wrap from. Just make sure with the fabric that you use, please ensure that you wash it thoroughly, as you will be using it for food. If you need to cut the fabric, I have fabric scissors or pinking shears. I have two types here. So these are fabric scissors with a straight line cut, and I've also bought fabric scissors with a pattern, because I like my beeswax wraps to have a nice pattern on the edge. You will also need a sponge for spreading the beeswax wrap around. Great, now that you know all the materials that you will need, let's get started. So first thing, let's cut our fabric into its desired shape. I'm using a piece of fabric that's 100% cotton. That's actually the best fabric to use. Otherwise, you can also use linen and hemp. With the fabric, what's important is that you use materials that are slightly see-through, because that will absorb the wax mixture much better. So I'll just go ahead and start to cut this. I'm going to cut mine into a circular shape. As you can see, it's making that beautiful pattern on the edge. I'm cutting mine into a circular shape because I tend to use it around bowls and plates and things. You don't have to. You can just use whatever shape you like. Mine will be about roughly 25 centimeters in diameter. And for roughly that size, you'll need about 40 grams of the beeswax and 40 grams of the pine resin and about 10 mils of the jojoba oil. But I'll measure that out for you later as well. So, sorry, I'm talking and cutting. This is the slowest cutting I've ever done. Hang on, I'm getting quicker. Here we go. So I will just keep going with that. So here you go, it's done. Isn't it just lovely? Look at that. I love this pattern, and I like that it has all those bumps as well. I try and reuse as much as I can. So I'll just show you. I've also cut up, I've made other things in the past, and then I have all these offcuts. So what I do is I've just sewn it, stitched it together at the back, and just made odd shapes. So there's this one, and we made our own face mask. So this was some of the leftovers, so I just sewed that one together. And I have an actual piece of fabric that's already, I bought this one like this in Japan that I'm just going to make. So it doesn't really matter what shape you make them in. Just sometimes you have obscure things like a handful of nuts or half a piece of fruit, and you may just want something little or just something to completely wrap around. That reminds me as well, with these beeswax wraps, they can be used for fruit, vegetables, nut snacks, sandwiches, just really like cold things like cheeses that you want to keep fresh. It's not good for meats and hot foods, so just be wary of that when you make your beeswax wrap. And then speaking of food and using it for food, once you've used your beeswax wrap, the way that you clean it is just with cold water and some not very super strong detergent, so not like a concentrated detergent or something. So yeah, just a mild light detergent and cold water, and that's how you clean them after you use them. Okay, so I have just started to set up the environment for making the beeswax wraps. Over here, I have, as you can see, there's some residual beeswax in there, in the pot and in the spoon and on the sponge because I've made it before. That's why I've allocated specific items to beeswax wraps making. This is where we'll put our ingredients in. I've set up my fabric on the oven tray, and over here I don't have a drying tray. Other people do. It is really good. I just keep trying to reuse this same piece of baking paper for as long as I can to dry the wrap on. I have also turned the stove top on to start boiling the water because we'll need the double boiler for our mixture, and I've turned my oven on to about, should be 200 degrees. So for the ingredients for the beeswax wrap mixture, for the size of my fabric, which is again about 25 centimeters in diameter, I'll need about 40 grams of the beeswax pellets. I'm just doing this to size, so that's about 40 grams of beeswax pellets. We will also need about 40 grams of the pine resin, and roughly 10 ml of the jojoba oil. Hello, can you see me from up there? Hi! Okay, so our water has started to boil, so I'll just take that off there. Woo! Okay. So now, as you can see, the water's boiling. This is our other pot dedicated to the beeswax wrap mixture. I will just place that on top there and start to stir all of this through together. So sometimes this takes about half an hour, or it can take about half an hour, depending on the size of the chunk of your pine resin and beeswax is. But as we're using the beeswax pellets and our pine resin chunks aren't super chunky, this shouldn't take that long. You just have to keep making sure that you stay with it and keep mixing because it gets very, very, very sticky. I really hope that you can see all this properly. So just keep on stirring. So I'll show you. Woo. Uh-oh. Hang on, it just stuck together. Just wait a second. Okay, we're not stuck anymore. I've just tilted it at an angle just there. What's also good about keeping it at an angle like this is that the beeswax will tend to melt a little bit quicker. And so if you can see there, it started to liquefy already. That means that if the pine resin is still chunky, it can just sit and break down in that beeswax liquid. I don't know if you saw that, but a little bit just flicked on me. Just be careful of that because it's very hot and very sticky. Lucky I'm wearing long sleeves. All right, let's just keep stirring. Just keep stirring, just keep stirring, just keep stirring. Okay, let's just keep on stirring. So if you can see that the beeswax has pretty much nearly melted, but the pine resin has turned into this like gelatinous kind of goop. Wait a minute, let me see if I can do this. So, whoops, gelatinous goop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it immersed there in the beeswax and jojoba oil and just keep trying to break it down so that it liquefies as well. So just carefully doing this because it's very, very hot and very sticky. So just slowly doing this. Okay, so just some troubleshooting. If you find that you have this like toffee like pine resin goop stuck to the end of the spoon, I've just grabbed what do you call these, skewers, barbecue skewers, and I'm just going to pry it off like this. Here we go. So just going to keep on prying that off so I can put it back in the liquid. Okay, so now I'll just keep on doing that. There. Okay, so are you still here? Because I'm still stirring super duper uber carefully. I'm having to use this little barbecue skewer a few times because it keeps getting stuck. I'm just stirring very carefully because this is a beeswax wrap mixture. I don't want it to spill outside the bowl because when I was first learning to make these, I was an overzealous stirrer and I got some outside the pot and it was so painful trying to get the wax off. So just stirring super carefully. Thanks for still staying with me. Okay, so if you can see, that's now completely turned into a liquid. All of that has melted together. What I'm going to do now so you can see is turn this down and nearly off. And I'm going to use my sponge. Carefully dip it into the mixture because it's really quite hot. And I'm going to carefully spread it onto my piece of fabric, taking very good care to make sure that I cover all of the fabric. So just putting my sponge in there carefully and then ensuring that I cover all parts of my fabric with the beeswax. So just going there. Okay. So here, nearly finished, just making sure that no parts are dry and every part of my wrap is covered in the wax, which it looks like it. Perfect. So as you've been preheating your oven on 200 degrees, what I'll do is I'll just put that aside. You can place this straight into the oven now. So here goes. Alright, so I'll get back to you in 2 minutes. Woo! It's been about 2 minutes, so I'm going to take it out of the oven and see what it looks like. Woo-hoo-hoo! Here it is! Beeswax wrap. Alright, I'll just close the oven. Okay, so I'll put that down there. So I've got my drying paper. So I'll just put that down. So what I'll do is I'll use this spoon to carefully pry it off the pan. I'll show you what that looks like. Okay. All right, here we go. It's just there. It's very hot, so be very careful. I'm just gonna quickly grab it, and then, as you can see, it's very wet. So I'll just move it over here to dry. Ugh. If you wait about 10 minutes, maybe less, that should dry and we'll be able to use it. Hooray! So it has now been about 10 minutes and my beeswax wrap has cooled down and here it is. So look how pliable and wonderful and squishy and smells like honey. How beautiful this is. There it is. So now I can just use it straight away. Let me see. Oh, okay. I have this beautiful persimmon, which is super ready to eat now. Say I want to take it out for lunch or go on a picnic. Clearly not right now, but later I can put that in there. And if you have a look, you can just wrap it up so easily because of that pine resin. It sticks so well. So there you go. Your little beeswax wrap, persimmon present. See? Can you see how well that's sealed? And it's quite firm, so that will keep that quite safe. So now I'm ready to go. We made a beeswax wrap. So here are some of the wraps I made today. Here are the obscure pieces from offcut fabrics. Here's a round one that I made. There's a round one that's already on a bowl. And again, another obscure one that I'll use for possibly leftover nuts and things. So they're the beeswax wraps we made today. So thank you so much for joining me today for beeswax wraps for beginners. I hope that you can have some fun making them for yourself at home as well. Please just keep an eye out on our Moonee Valley socials like Instagram and also Facebook for any other experiences and sessions that you might like to join in on. Otherwise, happy beeswax wrap making, and thanks everyone for coming to my kitchen. Bye everyone. Oh, actually, if you do end up making some beeswax wraps, it would be really great to see your creations online. So just post your photos in the comments or send them through to us so we can have a look. So thanks again everybody. Bye. Thanks.
Come on in here, come on in here, Alexander Ragtime Band. Come on in here, come on in here, the best band in the land. They can play a bugle call like you never heard before. So natural that you wanna go to war. It's